American household spends $500 a year removing a grocery store that is already growing in their backyard. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. $500, fertilizer, herbicide, lawn service, fuel for the mower, spent in direct opposition to a free, self-replenishing food system that requires no planting, no watering, no budget, and no plan. It is already there. You have been pulling it on schedule. I want to show you exactly which 6 plants those are. And I want to show you what you should be doing with them instead. You have probably heard some version of this before. Someone online telling you dandelions are edible, as if that settles it. It does not settle it. What I am going to give you today is not a list. It is a system. 6 plants, 6 distinct categories of value: vitamins, healthy fats, protein, commercial market value, soil nutrition, and seasonal coverage. And by the time we reach the 6th, the $500 number is going to mean something different to you than it does right now. My father grew up in a farmhouse outside Nagano, in the mountains, where the boundary between the garden and the surrounding land was not treated as a boundary at all. What grew was what grew. You learned what was useful and you used it. He did not use the word foraging. He would have called it paying attention. I have been growing food in this country for over 30 years, and it took me some time to fully understand what he meant. The first plant on this list, most people pull it before it even flowers, which is exactly the wrong move. Now, let me say something about how this happened, about how 6 useful plants became 6 problems. Before synthetic lawn culture took hold in American suburbs in the post-war decades, most of these plants were known quantities. They appeared in household herb lists, in kitchen gardens, in the margins of vegetable beds. They were not beloved exactly, but they were recognized. Then the standard shifted. A lawn became something uniform, something managed, something that signaled order. Thing that broke the pattern became a target. The herbicide industry found a very willing customer in the American homeowner, and the knowledge of what these plants were quietly faded. What remained was the habit of removal. The $500 is what that habit costs annually in the average yard. That figure does not count what you spend at the grocery store replacing the nutrition you just pulled up and threw away. Now, the first plant, dandelion. You know exactly what it looks like. The serrated leaf, the hollow stem, the yellow flower that becomes a seed, globe your children blow apart and scatter across the lawn. You have pulled hundreds of them, possibly thousands. What you may not know is what you were holding. 100 grams of raw dandelion greens, roughly a large double handful, contains around 650% of the daily recommended intake of vitamin K. It also delivers meaningful amounts of vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, iron, and potassium in a single serving. Spinach, which you may be buying at $2.50 a bag, does not come close to matching it. Every part of the dandelion is edible. The root, the leaf, the flower. The young leaves in early spring before the plant flowers are mild enough to eat raw in a salad. Once it flowers, the leaves become more bitter, which is not a flaw. Bitter greens have a long culinary history across Asia and the Mediterranean. In dried and processed form, dandelion root and leaf sell commercially for $12 a bag. There is a market for what you are composting. Young leaves are ready to pick within 2 to 3 weeks of the first spring growth, and a healthy patch keeps producing new leaves through the season as you harvest. The wrong move is what most people do, which is to spray it. A broadleaf herbicide kills the dandelion, yes. It also moves through the soil profile and lingers. University research on common broadleaf herbicides has documented soil residual activity of 6 months to over a year depending on conditions. You are not just killing the plant. You are treating the ground where your food could grow. Young leaf, hollow stem, yellow flower. That is the dandelion you want. Walk away. If this is the kind of thing you wish someone had told you years ago, that is what this channel is. One method, once a week, tested for 30 years before I ever say it out loud. Nothing sold to you. Subscribe if you want the next one. Vitamins are just the beginning. The next plant contains something most people pay a premium to get from fish: purslane. It grows flat along the ground with thick, succulent-looking stems and small paddle-shaped leaves. It loves disturbed soil, cracks in pavement, the edges of vegetable beds. You have almost certainly seen it and pulled it without a second thought, because it looks like nothing. It is not nothing. Purslane contains 300 to 400 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids per 100 gram serving, specifically alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, the plant-based form of omega-3. That is more omega-3 per gram than almost any other leafy green on Earth. The fish oil capsules you may be purchasing at $12 to $20 a bottle exist to deliver what purslane delivers for free in your garden beds. The leaves are mildly tart. They have a slight crunch. In parts of Greece and the Middle East, purslane has been a cultivated salad and cooking green for centuries. In Mexico, it appears regularly in traditional cooking. In America, it grows in your paths and you step on it. One honest limitation here, and I would rather you trust me than be impressed by me. AL, the omega-3 in purslane, is not the same as EPA and DHA, the forms found in fish oil that most supplement research is focused on. Your body converts AL to EPA and DHA, but the conversion rate is modest. Purslane is not a fish oil replacement. What it is a meaningful dietary source of plant-based omega-3 that you currently own and are currently removing. Pick the young stems and leaves in the morning. Rinse them. They can go into a salad, into eggs, into a stir-fry. New growth is harvestable within about 10 days of a cutting, since the plant regrows from any stem segment left in the soil, which is either a problem or a feature, depending on how you have decided to see it. Thick stem, paddle leaf, flat to the ground. That is the purslane you want. Walk away. Omega-3s from a weed surprises people. The next plant has a protein profile that makes it harder to ignore. Lambsquarters grows tall and fast, sometimes to 3 or 4 feet, with a flowery white coating on the underside of its diamond-shaped leaves. It looks like a weed because it is technically a weed. It also contains 4.2 grams of protein per 100 grams raw, comparable to many cultivated greens and higher than most. The wrong approach is the one most people take, which is to pull it before it reaches 2 inches, because it does not look intentional. Lambsquarters is a relative of quinoa. Same family. It has been eaten across North America, Europe, and Asia for thousands of years. When cultivated greens were scarce, lambsquarters filled the gap. It still does in the gardens where people recognize it. The leaves are best when young and tender. Steam them briefly, 3 to 4 minutes, and they behave like spinach. The taste is mild, slightly mineral, not unpleasant. Seeds from a mature plant are viable for up to 10 years in the soil, which is why once you have lambsquarters in a bed, you tend to have it in perpetuity. Reaches pickable size, a few inches tall, tender leaves, within 2 to 3 weeks of germinating, and it keeps coming back through the growing season without you doing anything. Wrong approach is to treat it as competition. Cultivated salad greens at $3 a bag require planting, watering, thinning, and pest management. Lambsquarters requires none of that. It simply appears. What it asks of you is recognition. Flowery leaf, diamond shape, fast grower. That is the lambsquarters you want. Walk away. Which of these 3 plants is growing in your yard right now? Leave it in the comments. I am curious where you are starting from. 1. Protein surprised you. The next plant is going to reframe what you think you know about nutrition. Stinging nettle. You know the sting. You may have walked into a patch barefoot or in shorts and spent the next 20 minutes regretting it. The sting is real, and I will tell you exactly how to handle it safely in a moment. First, the value. Dried stinging nettle leaf retails commercially for $8 to $15 per ounce. Per ounce, it appears in teas, in supplements, in herbal preparations. It is one of the most commercially traded medicinal and nutritional plants in Europe. The iron content is high. It contains vitamins A, C, and K, magnesium, and a set of plant compounds that university researchers in Germany and the United States have spent decades studying for their effects on inflammation and joint function. I am not making medical claims. I am telling you what the research community has found worth studying and for how long. That is the distinction that matters. 3 safety points, and I will not skip them. First, the sting. Nettle hairs are hollow and act like small needles. They deliver a mix of compounds that cause the burning, itching, raised skin reaction you already know about. Wear long sleeves and proper thick gloves, not light gardening gloves, anytime you are handling fresh nettle. The sting can cause significant skin irritation in sensitive individuals. If you experience swelling beyond the contact area, treat it seriously and contact a doctor. Second, children and pets. Keep them away from nettle patches. The sting is harmless to most adults in brief contact. In small children and animals who cannot identify the source of the pain, it is distressing and unnecessary. If a child touches a patch, run cool water over the area immediately. Do not rub it. Third, the sting is destroyed by heat. Blanching nettle and boiling water for 60 to 90 seconds neutralizes it completely. Dried nettle has no sting. If you are using fresh nettle in cooking, blanch it first. After that step, it behaves exactly like cooked spinach. Handle fresh nettle with gloves until it hits the water. After that, it is safe. Harvest young shoots in early spring. Before the plant reaches knee height, grip the stem with gloved fingers near the base and cut cleanly with scissors or a knife. Leave the root. It will regrow. A single established nettle patch, left alone, will produce harvests over many seasons. About $15 an ounce. Harvested patch regrows harvestable shoots within 4 to 6 weeks. Pulling it out is a decision with a measurable cost. Now it becomes something larger, because the next plant does not just feed you, it feeds your entire garden. Clover. White clover especially, though red clover behaves similarly. It spreads low across lawns and beds with the characteristic 3-leaflet shape. It flowers in small white globes that bees work constantly, and that is the first sign that something is happening here that goes beyond what you can see on the surface. Clover is a nitrogen fixer. That term means the plant, through a relationship with specific soil bacteria called rhizobia, that live in nodules on its roots, pulls atmospheric nitrogen directly from the air and converts it into a form that plant roots can absorb. The soil around a clover patch becomes measurably richer in available nitrogen over time. When you remove clover from a lawn or garden bed, you remove a living fertilizer system. The nitrogen it was producing does not replace itself. You replace it by buying it. A standard bag of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer for a home lawn costs $20 to $40 and requires reapplication each season. The active ingredient moves through the soil on contact with rain and irrigation. It does not build anything. It feeds the plant for a period, and then it is gone. Clover builds the soil. The nitrogen stays incorporated into organic matter, accessible to everything growing nearby. One white clover plant produces approximately 800 seeds. Those seeds remain viable in the soil for up to 10 years. A newly seeded patch begins fixing usable nitrogen within 6 to 8 weeks. And once established, it does not require you to do anything. It replants itself. It feeds its neighbors. It flowers continuously through summer, supporting pollinators that then work your vegetable beds. And it costs nothing. I watched my father turn clover under in the fall at the margins of his vegetable rows in Nagano. Not because it was a nuisance, but because turning it under released its stored nitrogen directly into the soil for the following spring's planting. He did not buy fertilizer for those beds. He did not need to. The standard American lawn care recommendation for decades has been to eliminate clover with broadleaf herbicide and replace it with a monoculture grass that requires the fertilizer the clover was already producing for free. You can work out what to make of that yourself. 800 seeds, 10-year viability, free nitrogen, pollinator support. That is the clover you want. Walk away. So you have vitamins, omega-3s, protein, micronutrients worth $15 an ounce, and free living fertilizer. The last plant closes the one gap every gardener complains about: the months when nothing is ready. Wood sorrel. It looks at first glance like a small clover, the same three-leaflet shape. But the leaves are heart-shaped and a brighter, more uniform green. And if you look closely, the leaves fold downward at night and in full shade, which clover does not do. It grows in the shoulder seasons, early spring when the soil is barely warm, and again in late fall when most cultivated crops have finished. That is exactly when you cannot find much to harvest anywhere else in a northern garden. The flavor is the surprise. Wood sorrel tastes sour, genuinely, pleasantly sour, because it contains oxalic acid, the same compound that gives rhubarb and sorrel their tang. The young leaves and small yellow flowers are edible raw. They are bright enough in flavor to use as a garnish in salads or eaten directly off the stem while you are walking the beds. There is nothing to prepare. It is harvestable within about a week of the first leaves appearing in early spring, and again as soon as it returns in the fall. One honest limitation: oxalic acid in large quantities is not something people with kidney stones or certain kidney conditions should consume freely. A handful of wood sorrel leaves as a garden snack is not a meaningful quantity. Eating it daily as a primary green over weeks would be. If you have been told to limit high oxalate foods, treat wood sorrel as an occasional harvest, not a staple. What it solves, for the rest of us, is the gap. In March, when the beds are empty, wood sorrel is ready. In October, when the last tomatoes are in, wood sorrel is still producing. Cold frames and grow lights and season extenders are sold specifically to address the gap it closes for free. That equipment runs $50 to several $100s for a basic setup. Wood sorrel asks you for nothing but the willingness to not pull it. Heart-shaped leaf, sour taste, early and late season. That is the wood sorrel you want. Walk away. Here is what you actually have in a yard where you have stopped removing these 6 plants. A vitamin K source that outperforms spinach and kale. A plant-based omega-3 source that requires no bottle and no purchase. A protein-dense green that plants itself and regrows without intervention. A plant the commercial herbal market values at $15 an ounce. Living nitrogen system that eliminates the need for seasonal fertilizer purchases, and a crop that produces in the months when everything else is dormant. Not one of them costs you anything to grow. Not one of them requires you to plant a single seed. Not one of them needs a watering schedule, a planting plan, or a bag of amendments from the garden center. The system self-replenishes. It has been doing so in most of these yards for years. What it has been missing is someone who recognized what it was. The $500 is not just what the average household spends on lawn care. It is the replacement cost in fertilizer, in supplements, in produce bags, in season extension equipment for what these plants were already providing before the herbicide reached them. My father called it paying attention. He was right. It does not require more than that. The soil holds everything your garden will ever be. Next time, I am going to show you how to read your soil before you plant anything, what it is already telling you if you know where to look. Till then, leave the clover in the beds and the wood sorrel at the edges. And remember, the right answer is usually cheaper, simpler, and older than the thing being sold to you.